So we are here for a discussion. As you know, this is a conversation about Ask the Rabbi. You can ask your questions. There's nothing too difficult to ask, nothing that you're not allowed to ask. Things are difficult, but nothing you're not allowed to ask. And we try our best to address those questions. So we had a question that came in. I don't know if you meant to ask this question. I think it was on your mind anyway, but the question was, what do Jewish women, what's their role in Judaism? What exactly is the role that they play? And I think this is a question that many people have in the front of their mind or in the back of their mind, especially when they encounter Orthodox Judaism. They have, it's a beautiful experience and they love it and it's authentic and it's real and it's deep. But then they're like, wait, why do Jewish women seem to be taking a back seat? Right? Why do they seem to be sitting in the passenger seat? And I will do my best to answer this question in the same vein that we've been talking in previous classes, giving you the Kabbalah, giving you the depth, showing you the beauty of Judaism and the full picture. And I'm very excited because if I do justice to the reality of it, I think you'll walk away, both the women in this room as well as the men in this room will walk away having clarity on what their mission is in this world, as well as what the other gender's mission is in this world. Okay, so let us begin. So I want to go around with asking, what are your questions? Or what are your concerns? Or what bothers you when it comes to this subject? If there is anything, you don't have to have questions, but if you do have questions, for those on the screen as well, feel free to speak up.
Feminism and the plight of feminism in our society today is a very big subject in my family. With my son's wife and all my granddaughters, which is very good. I mean, there's nothing. However, the discussions that we've had religiously with my family, and my son went to yeshiva. He has a good solid background in Judaism. And her feeling, she came from more progressive and reformed. And you are addressing exactly that subject. She feels that there is no place, these are her words, there is no place for women in orthodoxy. Therefore, she feels discounted. She feels disrespected. These are words that she used. I'm not saying this, but this is the feeling that a lot of women today have.
Sure.
And this is what and you could convince or talk, or if a person's set in one mindset, it's very hard to change. And
right. So here we're only here to talk to ourselves. What are specific concerns that anyone else has? Anything? Specific concerns? Or questions?
No, I love what your tagline was, the divine purpose, feminine essence, sacred balance.
Okay.
I think
so we answered the question already.
I want to hear what you have to say. I think there is extreme power in the feminine.
Okay, anyone on the screen, anyone on the Zoom have any thoughts they want to share? Okay, so with that said, I thought we would have more questions.
I have a question.
Go
I
for
don't
it.
know if it'll maybe probably tie in better at the end of the conversation. 'Cause I
Just
feel like
just say your
go one
thought.
direction. Very different question. And I don't even know if I can phrase this properly, but I mean, in the same way that the Rebbe passed away in 1991, and there's no Rebbe right now, right? That basically, from what I understand, the Chabad community has not found anyone to kind of step into his shoes, right? So essentially, are there roles in like halachic female perspective to leadership that just haven't come about yet? Like, are there like women that haven't been born yet, or maybe that are born and that haven't stepped into the right shoes yet? Are there new avenues for the female experience in the Chabad that just haven't come about yet because maybe it hasn't been the right circumstance yet, right? I was curious about that.
That's a very good question. Very interesting question. It's an interesting question. So I'm going to divide the question into two. There's a more theological question, or philosophical question, and then there's a practical question that you're asking. There's the idea of why haven't we seen female leaders in Jewish history? That's question number one, which is a great question.
Leaders in female Jewish history, right? Like Esther, it's in the Torah,
So that was going to, right, but correct. But it would seem like there have been more men leaders than women leaders in Jewish history. And then the second question would be a practical question about today. If you have a Rebbe, you're asking, is there a place for a woman to become the new Rebbe? Is that the question?
I didn't want to go that far, but I'm curious to see what he would have had to say about it.
Right, because essentially that question is, why isn't there a new Rebbe, period? Man or woman, male or female.
Right.
It's not so much a question.
It's kind of two different questions for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So there are, and there have been, like you mentioned, Esther, female leaders in Jewish history. Even in recent history, there has been Rebbitzins that have been giving blessings and have had clear powers to bless and to, bring people closer to Judaism. In my tradition in Chabad, when we go to the Ohel and we visit the Rebbe's gravesite, we'll also visit his wife's gravesite. And we don't just go there out of respect, we go there because she was definitely a holy woman. There was a story of Chabad woman that I think it was in honor of the Rebbe of the Rebbitzins' birthday, the Rebbe's wife's birthday. So they got a bouquet of flowers and they got a list of names of women for blessings. And they brought the list to the Rebbe and they were going to give the flowers to the Rebbe's wife. And the Rebbe said the list could go to her as well. She could also give that blessing. So again, I think it's two different questions over here, which is, could women be leaders? And then the second question would be, why has there not been a substitute? And I think that the answer to that question on one foot is obviously we feel very strongly that there is no adequate substitute. And we've seen over the last 30 years that perhaps we don't need a substitute because Chabad has been flourishing, and the Rebbe in a sense is still leading us. So Chabad definitely feels very strongly. Okay, so great. So we have the questions about this discussion. And I love that question that you brought up about Jewish women being leaders. Again, we've seen Jewish women as leaders, but for some reason they're not as known. They seem to be very much the minority. So hopefully we'll get to that question. You want to say something, Nita? You're going to say something?
Just my vision is women nurture the holiness within the home and the community, where the men it's more external, where they go out and they it's not that the women don't practice with the laws and the traditions, but they're more like not the backbone, but they're like these strengths underlying what the men do.
I love it. So that's
So it's
Anita,
like-
like last week, Anita could be giving the class over here. So that actually was my second question that I was going to ask to the group around the table, which is, now that we have the questions, the question is, what are your thoughts? Before we get into what I have to say, what are the preconceived notions, or what are the takes? You feel free to be honest. If you feel like women sit second class or whatever it might be, what is your take or your thought or your inspiration on the unique role, or is it unique? Are women equal? Do they have a unique role? What are your thoughts in terms of Judaism and the role that women play or should play? Any thoughts?
And I think that your question obviously is a very divisive one, like in terms of the fact that there is a progressive movement, which obviously takes a lot of concern with Chabad in this respect, right? And the same with people in the homosexual community, right? Like, it, hasn't necessarily
Mine Justine.
been like approved or accepted, and so I think that an interesting route that I've seen a lot of, like, especially here in this community, like in Great Neck, for example, I would say, and I live here in Manhasset, but I've seen a lot of people in Great Neck. It's like, you have this push towards progressivism, with like Reform Judaism, and that's kind of like how I was raised personally. And then now we're seeing it's almost like a modern traditional take, right? Where you have the man and the woman in the household are both working, and maybe the woman does a little bit more house, like time with the kids and housework, but like has found a way to still produce income, and maybe even on an equal footing, right? And so like now I think like there's this fascinating embrace of like both spouses are working in modern society, and like how can we still like go to temple every Saturday and like be involved in the Jewish community without necessarily taking the female role, that in traditional Chabad households, women don't necessarily work, right? Or maybe they do, but it's not in the same capacity as the male spouse, right?
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm thinking about the women, like, I love this stuff, but the other stuff is women having Aliyahs.
Yeah, so that's part of the same
Yeah.
Great. So that's what I was waiting for someone to ask.
Yeah, like, I believe they can and should, but I'd love to hear what.
So why you're asking, why is it that in Orthodox Judaism or in traditional Judaism, women haven't been given that opportunity for aliyahs and to be counted in a minyan and all those stuff. So obviously this is a sensitive topic, and we will venture to satisfy those around the table.
Type being the vessel, and then there's the whole the logistics of Aliyah and Minyan. And
So
I think it's
so
different.
what I hope to do today is to show you how they're actually one. Yeah, okay. So before we continue, I just want to mention again that there's bagels and cream cheese, coffee. So please help yourself, because otherwise no one's gonna eat it. So please go ahead. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. Okay. So we are going to move on to our next slide, and the next slide is, I think, going into the question that we've just heard, the last point. I think that kind of addressing this kind of like from last week. So let's start from the very basic. I think the basic feeling that people get from Orthodox Judaism, especially from the concept of an Aliyah and those type of stuff, is that women play a certain lower grade role in Judaism. They're not as important as men. Okay, men are more important, and women are not as important. That's what I think people have a certain concern, or there's a certain underlying idea towards that. Does that make sense? Does that resonate?
Absolutely.
Okay. And to address that, I want to first and foremost address what's important in Judaism. And before I go there, I want to ask, because this topic, I think, hits both intellectual parts of the person as well as emotional parts of the person, especially if you've been a Jewish woman for many years, that you try, for the sake of our topic, to approach this intellectually. Let's try to come from a clean slate. Let's try to hear a new perspective, something that we haven't been open to. Because if we come from an emotional place, then, kind of like you were mentioning about your daughter-in-law, if something is so ingrained, then you're not really open to hearing something that might even resonate, might even make a difference to you, because you're so steadfast. There's only one way to go about this. So for the sake of this conversation, if you're interested, open yourself up and let us try to venture from a different standpoint. And this is going to be both for the woman as well as for the men, as I've mentioned. And here the question is, what is important in Judaism? If there's an argument that women are not as important as men are more important than women, or perhaps Judaism is primarily for the man and the women are kind of coming along for the ride. So the question is going to be, well, what is important? What makes something important? If we are arguing that men are important and women are not, we have to understand what's important. And based on that, we'll be able to see if that's the reality, if that's actually the case. So if you've been part of my class for the last few weeks, you know what I'm going to say, I think, that in Judaism, there's only one thing that's important, which is God. Nothing else is important. Nothing else has any value. Nothing in this world has any value. The only value system in our life, in our world, in Judaism, is God. So where do we take a place in that, right? And the answer is if we play a role in God's plan. And we obviously have a role in God's plan because He created us, right? The line my father likes to say is we got to know that there is nothing more important to me than God, and equally, there's nothing more important to God than me. If God created me, definitely I have a role to play over here. And if we play our role, we are as important as the importance of God. We take on that importance. But if we don't play that role, then we don't have importance. Because again, the only importance that exists is God. Okay, I don't know if I have to give more explanation. I'm a little banking on what we've spoken about in the past. But this is if you want to approach this from kind of accepting it or hearing it, or you understand what I'm saying, but I'm going into this path, which is I understand everyone, again, there's a lot of emotions worked up and feelings and past experiences and other things that you've been taught and thought about. It's very hot in here. Where?
I'm sorry, I'm feeling kind of.
Where is the
walk.
You want to look for the air conditioner? Perfect.
Thank you. This is feeling like
No, it's been getting hot in here. So,
I'm on medication too, so it doesn't.
okay. So again, if we're talking about what is important, who is important, are men more important than women? The answer is obviously not because we believe in equality, right? So the world has dealt with this issue by saying there's equality. Men are the same as women. Women are the same as men. But the Jewish perspective, Judaism's perspective is actually no. Men are equally unimportant. Okay? Men are equally not important. Or in other words, our importance is not our gender. Our importance is not our humanity. Our importance is not whatever else makes us who we are, other than the fact that all of those things play a role in God's mission. And the more we bring those things, we harness those things for God or for goodness, for the truth, all of those things become important, right? So if I use my emotions for God or I use my intellect for God, that takes on a godly importance, a cosmic importance. The things that I leave alone, the things that I don't bring along for the ride, I don't bring to God, I don't offer up for God, those remain unimportant. Okay, obviously we're coming from a very religious standpoint over here, but this is the Judaism perspective. So if the question is, does Judaism look at women less than men? And the answer is there isn't equality because the only thing that's important is God. And therefore, women and men both don't have any importance. Their only importance is what they serve, their role that they serve. They could be part of the truth. They could be part of something which is beyond them. They could be part of something which is godly, something so much greater than a male or a female. Now, the trick is going to be to understand what roles do they play in God's plan. And recognizing that they are different tells me that God obviously has a different role for them. And therefore, what's going to make their importance is by them fulfilling that individual role. And if I try to be someone else, the famous line, if I try to be someone else, who will be me? Right? If I try to be someone else, so then I am sacrificing my own importance because my importance is only what God needs of me, what He wants from me. And what he needs of me is how he created me. So if he created me in a certain way, that means I have something to offer. I have something to bring to the table that no one else could do. The Rebbe, and I'm a little bit jumping the gun here, but the Rebbe actually argued that the equality movement, the Rebbe was, for one, someone that pushed women to work and to be out there and to be leaders. And if you look at Chabad, you mentioned traditional Chabad families, but if you look at what the Rebbe's vision was for a Chabad woman, was to be a shlucha running a Chabad house. The shlucha is just as important, if not more important, than the man in any Chabad house. You know, if you look at my parents, if you look at my own shluchas, if you have other shluchim, you see the shlucha and times you don't see, but the shlucha in every situation plays a huge role. And the Rebbe actually said this is coming to Mashiach, which maybe we'll get to later, the time of the Messiah, where the woman will be essentially more important than the man in certain respects. We'll have to get there, but and maybe that's essentially where the equality movement is coming from, without them knowing it.
What does that mean, shofar?
Like
What?
the Rebbitzin.
Shlucha is the woman of the Chabad rabbi,
Okay.
right? The wife of the Chabad rabbi.
The kids' college.
That the women play a very important role. Yes, sure. Especially in college campus, yes.
Yeah.
So, but if you look at all the Rebbe's talks, the Rebbe specifically had talks to women. There was no talk the Rebbe had only to men. The Rebbe had talks only to women. Men were not invited. The older men were kicked out of the main sanctuary, and the women would gather, and the Rebbe would talk to them and talk to them about their mission, their unique role. And I can't do justice in this class and give you all of that, but I want to give you a taste of, I think, the essence, my understanding of the essence of what it's about. But what I was going to, I got a little carried away, is the Rebbe pointed out that the equality movement, arguing women are just as good as men, is actually the biggest insult to a woman. Because what you're saying is that women don't have their own uniqueness that stands over the man. And the Rebbe argued that if women are different than men, that means that they have qualities that men don't have, which make them unique. So there isn't equality. Everyone is unique in their own way. The same way every single one of us are different. We play a unique role in God's world. We're all different. And no one wants to be equal. No one wants to say, I'm the same as you. I'm different than you. Each of us with strengths and weaknesses. And always, always, our weaknesses are strengths, and our strengths are weaknesses. They all serve a different purpose. Recognizing who I am and being comfortable with who I am. Being comfortable with me being me, just being myself, is the greatest compliment to myself and the greatest way of me fulfilling my eternal divine mission. Having real importance, not importance in other people's eyes, not importance of what my society decided is important, right? We live in America where everything is about making money. So if a woman's not making money, she's unimportant. But how could there be something more further from the truth than that? Recognizing my importance, recognizing my unique role, what I could do that no one else could do. And I think every person in this room, whether you're male or female, knows that raising the children, your wife is much better at it. It's not just that that's her job. Like, okay, you deal with the women and I'll make the money. She's kicking me out of the house because she's much better at that. So that's going to be the premise that we're going to begin with today, recognizing that this argument that women are less important than men in Judaism simply has no beginning, because men are not important. What's important is God, and what makes us important is by doing our role, fulfilling our unique role within God's plan. And in that sense, we're all equally important. And when I say equal, I mean even when you talk about a leader versus a layman. What I mean by that is you have, let's say, people like the Rebbe, and you have people like me and you, right? So you would think the Rebbe is more important. You know, the Rebbe is the leader of the community or the leader of the generation. So does that give him more importance? But anyone that met the Rebbe knew very clearly that he did not give any more importance to himself than to the person that was standing on the other side of the table. To the point that before his passing, he said this many times. He said, people are relying on me too much because I could only do so much that I could do. The rest has to be done through you. There's a great clip. I don't think I've played it here. Maybe I'll play it one day. But there's an incredible clip of the Rebbe spoke at a talk 4 years before his passing, 6 years before his passing. It was 4 years before his stroke. And sorry, I'm getting mixed on the dates. It was a year before his stroke, a few months before his stroke, 3 years before his passing. And he basically said, in very strong words, he said, I've done everything that I could do to bring Mashiach, to bring the Messiah, and the rest is for you guys to do. It was almost like he's retiring. And people were devastated. They didn't know what to make of that. And until today, there's a lot of talk about what the Rebbe meant, and there's been a lot of discussion to the Rebbe after that. And people, like, they didn't know what to do about it. And there's this woman, an older woman, a Sephardic woman that comes, I don't think she's religious. She's coming by the Rebbe that Sunday, a few days later, and that Sunday for dollars, the Rebbe would give out dollars. And she comes by the Rebbe and she says, you can't do this. You can't let us go like this. You can't leave us alone. We need you. And the Rebbe says, I gave it over to you. You got to do everything that you could. And she loses herself completely. And she says, I need my son back. I lost my son and I need my son back. Right? And she's saying, like, Mashiach is going to bring back my son. And I was relying on you that you're going to bring Mashiach. And now you're saying, now you're putting up your arms and you're saying that you're not going to do it. And it's up to me. Well, I can't do it. So it's not going to happen. And she's crying. She's devastated. And the Rebbe turns to her and the Rebbe turns to the people around. And the Rebbe said, I said very clearly that it's up. The Rebbe said, how could I do it if I'm just one person? And the Rebbe said, we need you and you and you and you. And to me, the video is a very strong video, very shocking video. But to me, the message the Rebbe was saying was recognize your own power. Don't underestimate yourself. You're coming and saying you could do it, no one else could do it. That's not true. That's simply not true. The reason why I could bring Mashiach, says the Rebbe, is because I'm a Jewish person. I have a soul. I have connection to God. I can make a difference in this world. I could do a mitzvah. I could put on tefillin. You could do that too. I'm just one. We need all of us. Recognize your own power and recognize your own individuality. Because if I'm just one person, I can only accomplish so much. And we need the rest of you. From a Jewish perspective, the Rebbe's importance is that he's the leader. That's not my phone, right?
No.
The Rebbe's importance is that he's the leader. And our importance is the importance that we play. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that in other societies, the king is the most important. And everyone else is just following that. Everyone else is just a detail on the king's importance, right? And when we came in America and we introduced democracy, so we changed that all. From a Jewish perspective, if you look in Jewish history, the king was never that. The king was never that role. The king's role was to bring people to God. In other words, the only importance, like we said at the beginning, is God. And the king's role is only to be the leader. And if he's going to fail as a leader, he failed as a king. And the importance of everyone else is to be the followers. A leader is not any more important than following. You need both to have a healthy dynamic. Once we have a higher purpose, once we have a divine mission, so then every single one of our individual roles serves an equal purpose, an equal important purpose. Even qualifying, quote unquote, the simplest Jew with the greatest Jew alive. In Jewish tradition, there's no such thing as higher or lower. We're all of equal importance. Does that make sense? But equal importance doesn't mean that I'm going to drop my uniqueness and they'll drop their uniqueness and we're all going to just do the same thing. Equal importance means that when we all do our different things, our different roles, we have equal importance. Okay? Does that make sense? You're liking this? You're not liking this so much. Okay. Okay, so with that, the question now is, if we are on board with me, that the question isn't, are women just as important as men? The question now is the service of women the same as men? So we, in my mind, we dealt with the question of, are women less important than men? No, God is important. What's important is that we do our role. And here the question is, so what's our role? Right? What is our role? What is our purpose? What is our divine mission? And I want to begin, which I already touched upon before, which is that we all have a divine mission. And that divine mission is unique to every single one of us. The fact that we have different souls, we have different identities, we have different personalities, we have different histories, different backgrounds, we live in a different space, that all of that means that each and every single one of us have a unique role. There's no two raindrops that are alike. There's no two humans that are alike. If God created two of us, that means we're different. Otherwise, he would have created one of us. So the premise is, before anything, is that every single one of us plays a unique role. And that starts with our very soul. Our soul is our mission. Our soul is our purpose. And every single one of us is different than anyone else. There is no equality. We're all unique. The Talmud tells us every single person should tell himself, is obligated to tell himself, the world was created for me. That sounds very selfish, but essentially it's the most selfless thing. Recognizing that I am needed to the utmost extent because I can't rely on anyone else. Everything around me and everyone around me, whether the person that I like or the person that I don't like, was placed in their time and place for me to fulfill my mission and my purpose, for me to be my best self. And it's only up to me to make that happen. The world is standing on a scale and it's waiting for me to act. There is no equality. It's only about you. It's only about you. And with that said, we all have a uniqueness. I'm going to take this further and say how within this there are categories. Within the fact that every individual is unique, there are general categories which divide us from each other. Okay? Let us say very simply, each of our families also have a unique role to play. So just like every individual has a unique role, every family has a unique role, which no other family has. So we're taking that division, but we're creating a broader group. Every community in this world has a unique role to play. You're following me? The makeup of those individuals create a community, and that community has a unique role. And the same thing will be true in terms of other generalities. There was a private audience, or it wasn't so private, but there was a group of Hillel students, of students, university students, that they came with their Hillel, their local Hillel, to the Rebbe. So they came to Crown Heights, and they heard about the Grand Rebbe, and they wanted to have a talk with him. This is the early years, this is the 60s. And they came to talk to the Rebbe in private audience, maybe it was in the 50s. And this audience is recorded, it's transcribed. You could actually read it in English. And they have various questions. They asked the Rebbe, are you a miracle worker? They asked the Rebbe, how could God do bad things to good people? This was not long after the Holocaust. So various questions that the Rebbe responded to and dealt with. And one of their questions was, is it true that Jewish people have a unique soul that non-Jewish people don't have? Jewish people have a Jewish soul. And the Rebbe said, this is how the Rebbe answered the question. He said, in our body, we have a soul. We have one soul. And that soul gives different energy to different organs? Does it give more important energy to the mind versus the heart, or more important energy to the heart versus the toe? It gives the exact energy that it needs, because the role that the toe plays is different than the role that the mind plays. And the mind needs the toe perhaps just as much as the toe needs the mind. There are roles that the toe plays that the mind cannot play, and there are roles that the mind plays that the toe cannot play. In the moment that one says, well, I'm jealous of the other, I actually want to be the other, then you have total chaos. The moment that there isn't that unity of recognizing that our differences make up one body, and we have to respect those unique roles, we have chaos. The mind loses its footing, the mind loses its ability to touch, and it's not about the mind. None of us are our mind. We are our full body, right? And that all of that is that one soul that's giving life to all of it. And again, it's giving life according to exactly what its function is. So the Rebbe said that we have one God, and that God is the truth of the entire universe, the soul of all of us. And he imbues within every single one of us a soul with our unique mission and purpose. And just like every single individual has a different soul, none of us have the same soul because we have a unique mission. The same is true that a Jew as a whole and a non-Jew as a whole have different missions. And therefore their souls are slightly different. All generated from the same godly soul. And the same thing will apply to every other division within this world. Right? To name a few, we have Kohen, Levite, Yisrael, right? The Kohen, they have different roles, different missions within the Jewish people. We have male and female. What are other divisions that we might have? Any thoughts?
Quick picture, the last slide that you just
Sure.
had.
Any other different roles that come to mind?
Leader and follower.
Leader and follower, right? That's great. Anything else?
Smart and not so smart.
Smart and not so smart. Or better said, smart and more action-based. Intellectual and people that are good at doing things, right? We need both. We need both to run a society. It says actually I've been studying about this lately. The king is subjected to the field. This is a verse. The king is subjected to the field because no matter how great the king is, he needs to eat. So he needs the farmer. There's no such thing as a king says, I don't need a farmer. You could be a king, but you need the farmer, right? So we have smart and more action-based. We have laborer
and an intellect.
and intellect, right? We have
Teacher and student.
teacher and student. We have young and old and middle-aged. Within ourselves, we might switch over roles as we get older, right? So our younger ages are more about study and self-growth. And then once we reach middle age, it's more about giving and being there for others and creating a family. And older age is more about wisdom and imparting that wisdom to others. So within ourselves, we change roles as we get older,
The word's just important.
right?
Mhm.
Within our day, says Hasidic thought, we change roles. According to Judaism, our day is supposed to start with prayer and then study, and then we go out to work. So essentially, within 24 hours, we're living the span of a full lifetime. Because just like in our life, in our younger years, we're studying and we're focused on self-growth. In our middle years, we're working and giving. In our later years, we're again kind of focusing on ourselves and giving and that wisdom. The same is with our structure of every single day, 24 hours. We're supposed to, in the morning, the first few hours of the morning, give for ourselves, study, pray. The middle hours of the day is working, developing this world. And then the later hours, again, is returning back to ourselves. So that's just, I would love to hear any other ideas, but that's just, or if anyone on the screen You've been very quiet. Has something to add. Any other things that come to mind of differences, differentiations between people? Okay, what do we?
Teacher.
Student and teacher, right? We mentioned that. Or any job, any profession. We're going into a little bit of a different arena here, and this is
Like my children in medicine, there's doctor, nurse,
right.
because I even see that, oh, one thinks she's smarter than the other.
But she's not, they have different roles.
They have different roles,
Mm-hmm.
and one knows something that the other one doesn't.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Sometimes you pick the wrong role too.
Pardon me?
Sometimes you pick the wrong role.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
You don't always
That's exactly
do
right.
what is appropriate for yourself.
That's exactly
and
right.
do-
Not always is it about being the best in what our society consists, but the best is recognizing the biggest
Within-
blessing is recognizing what we are the best at,
That's correct.
Mhm.
right?
Teachers are born, not made.
Mhm.
You can try, and if you're very intelligent, but that's another aspect.
Yes, Anita.
How we apply our roles with our animal soul and our spiritual soul, how we
Sure.
affect what we're doing.
That's exactly right. That's exactly
Mind
right.
or heart. That plays a big part in.
That's exactly right. Okay. So I think we spent enough time on this. So I'm going to move on. We're here, right? The unique roles, one body, and the premises are all different. And within those differences, there are generalities. And we mentioned a few of them.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
One of the things we do in our lives, we see all the time is profiling, where people are being profiled. Now, there are things that working against this concept, also where humanity has its own input in all of this,
Sure.
which makes it muddy.
Sure. So that's why we have
A
to,
lot of muddiness
so we have to return to our
happens.
tradition, right?
Right,
That's why we
so-
have to hold on.
That's how do we get more than an army?
Well, that's the reason why Judaism has endured without an army, because there's a underlying truth which continues to exist because it's really the makeup of this world. So people come and go with different ideas, but what God's plan is and has always been remains,
Remains, right?
right?
The woman who didn't want Rabbi Schneerson to step back. Basically, it's like a parents telling a child, you have to fly now.
Exactly.
The only thing is, things get watered down in life. Sometimes also based on the input of things. So the nucleus of that concept and those people over generations and generations and generations, how do we make that Rabbi Schneerson the forerunner of continuing
We got to do our part. We just got to do our little part.
it?
There's actually a beautiful story which came to mind when you said that. There was a mashpia, one of the mentors in the Hasidic yeshiva back in the day, and there was a child that came from public school and he showed up to the yeshiva and he wanted to learn. He was desperate to learn about Torah, about Judaism, and his mentor, who was the leader of the yeshiva, was a great giant in Torah thought, in Hasidic thought, and he took a personal interest for this child because he saw unique qualities that he had, a special heart, not necessarily a special mind, but a special heart, which is special in its own right, that he recognized that and he cherished that. And he really raised him, and he raised him within the ways of Hasidic thought. And at one point, he told him a story. He said, there was once a a um a duck. I think that's what it was. There was a duck that got lost, a baby duck, and there was some chicken that found this duck and said, "I'm going to protect you." And the chicken raised the duck and gave it everything it needs and gave the wisdom that it needs. And the duck was the chicken was the parent, for the duck. And one day they're taking a stroll and they're talking and they're conversing and whatever it might be, and the chicken's imparting wisdom. And finally they get to a pond. And the chicken turns to the duck and says, I took you thus far, but I cannot go any further. You're on your own now. And this was the message that this teacher, this mentor, was telling his student. He said, at this point, you surpassed me. At this point, you have uniquenesses, and don't let me being your mentor limit those uniquenesses. Don't let them stifle you, because you're special and you have something to give that I cannot give. That's a leader. A leader is like Rabbi Jonathan Sachs said about the Rebbe. He said the Rebbe made leaders, right? He's the leader that made leaders to bring out the uniqueness in every individual. That when you walked into him, you didn't walk out saying, he is a great man. You walked out saying, I'm a great person, recognizing our own uniqueness, and that I could go on and swim in that pond because that's what makes me special. That's what life is really all about. Okay, so we've been getting a lot in, and I hope to also get in what we plan on talking about today. Okay, so revisiting our actual conversation, which is, again, what is the unique role of a woman? And at this point, I think it's understood that the question isn't if women have a unique role different than men, but the only question is, what is that unique role? Because if they were created different, they obviously have a unique role. They obviously have something to bring to the table that men cannot bring to the table. Now, I would venture to say that the same thing is the other way around. Men have something, hopefully, that women cannot offer. I would hope. Well, we'll try. But definitely, women created different have something unique, have something special, which if they harness that uniqueness, then that will be their specialty. That's their divinity. Now, to be clear, that doesn't take away from going beyond that. Rebbe spoke about this very often. Rebbe said, every single person has their primary job, their primary mission. And if I were to try to be someone else and forsake my primary mission, then that's a sin. It's a sin to God, but more importantly, it's a sin to myself. But if I am big enough to do my primary mission, but to do more than that, to go beyond that, then why not? There's nothing holding you back. There's nothing telling you only this. Don't do more, right? And the Rebbe spoke about this, about women working. The Rebbe said women should definitely work if they also could raise a family. But if you can't work and raise a family, then your primary mission is to raise your family. So it would be a sin to go and work. What's more important than raising children that can the existence of this world? That is your primary mission. Does that mean that you're limited to that? Absolutely not. If you could go beyond, if you could do more, go for it. There's an incredible story of a woman by the name of Chana. Are you familiar with this woman, Chana? To ring a bell? Chana was the mother of Samuel the prophet. Okay, does this ring a bell, this name? This woman? So
I remember, but from the Bible.
okay,
Yeah,
so
I don't know if it's the same one.
the story of Chana, in one of the stories of Chana, in a very short version, is Chana was a prophetess. Chana was, in her own right, a great Jewish woman, one of those examples, an incredibly special Jewish woman, a very spiritual woman. And she was married to the leader of the generation, and she was barren. She did not have children. And she really wanted children. And at one point, she traveled to Jerusalem, and she made her way to the Holy Temple, to the Beit HaMikdash, and she went up to the Holy Temple, where Eli, the high priest, was. He was the leader within Jerusalem of the generation, the prophet of the generation, and she started whispering. She started crying. She was whispering to God. In those days, there was no such thing as silent prayer. She invented silent prayer. You prayed out loud. So Eli took her as a nutcase. Why are you whispering to yourself? And he said, drunken woman, remove yourself from this holy premise, from this holy place. And she said, no, I'm not drunk. I'm desiring for God, I'm desiring for a child. And she made a vow that when she has a child and he's of age, she will send him to serve in the Holy Temple and he will grow up there. He'll be raised there. And this became the great prophet Samuel. He was born a year later, and he became the leader of the Jewish people. He anointed Saul, the king. He anointed King David, and he was a great leader in our history, perhaps one of the greatest prophets in our history. So the story goes that when the year after Samuel was born, he wasn't yet of age to be brought to the Holy Temple. It was only the year later, where obviously he was a very great person. At the age of 2 years old, his mother brought him up to the Holy Temple and left him there. And he was raised there and he lived there and he became the person that he became. When he was 1, the question was if Hannah, his mother, is going to travel to Jerusalem for the high holidays and for Sukkot. There's 3 holidays in the year that we travel up to Jerusalem. The Jewish people will travel up. And she said, I am not traveling this year. Why am I not traveling? I have a little baby. He has to be tended to. I have to care for him. I'm not traveling to the Holy Temple. And the Rebbe asked the question. The Rebbe said, first of all, you could still tend to him when you travel. You know, people travel with their children and they take care of them. So what's the big deal? You'll be there for them. You'll take care of them. In addition, Hannah was a wealthy woman, so she could afford help, maids. In those days, it was very normal to have a wet nurse. So take care of your child and travel. And to add to the question, we're not just talking about any woman. Hannah was a prophetess. Hannah was a woman. If there's anyone that would appreciate coming to the Holy Temple, it was Hannah. If there was anyone that would appreciate seeing the divinity of the Holy Temple and connecting to God on that level, it was Hannah. So why is she giving up on that opportunity for taking care of her son? And the Rebbe's response was, he said, because Hannah, recognizing her primary role as a mother, recognized that true, I could take care of Samuel in Jerusalem, but I can't take care of him as well as I could over here. When I'm home and we're not traveling and we're settled, he's better taken care of here. And she said, recognizing her primary role, she said, I'm ready to give up all the other things that I could encounter and all the greatness that I could have and the things that she yearned for, that she longed for, that she lived for. Because there's something more important at stake, which is giving Samuel a little more of a quality upbringing. She's not forsaking him, but just that little quality upbringing, just not giving him that full experience. She said, that's my primary role, and that's more important to me than anything. And I would not give up that for anything in the world. And I think that's a very important sentiment for all of us, for men and women alike, no matter where we find ourselves, recognizing what's our primary role. It doesn't have to be grand, doesn't have to be full of honor or riches, but what's really grand is what our primary role is, what we're the best at, and to not give that up for anything. When we're the best at that, if we could do more, go ahead. By all means, do more. Take it to the next step. So with the half hour that we have left, and if you have to go, then I don't want to hold you.
Next time I'll be here for the hour.
Okay. Thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rabbi. It was amazing. Thank you.
We're not done, Lisa. You could go. We're not done.
It's usually an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Have a good day. Have a good day,
Oh.
guys. Shavua tov.
Shavua tov, Lisa. Okay, so again, we're doing a lot of introductions here, but this introduction that we're doing is we already said that women are unique, and we said that what our uniqueness is what we could do for God, what our purpose is in this world, right? So what's important is God, and what makes us important is when we do that individual role, and every single one of us are different, and within that we have our bubbles that we exist within, our generalities that we exist within. And And with that, the question becomes, okay, so what is the uniqueness of the Jewish woman? What is the exact role of the Jewish woman? But I preface that by saying, whatever that is, it doesn't take away from doing more. Right? So if you feel I could do that, but I could do more, then absolutely go ahead. And the Rebbe, like I mentioned before, extremely empower the Jewish women to do that. He said you could raise your family, but you could also run a Chabad and you could host 100 students by your Shabbat meal. Don't limit yourself. Go for it. Run with it. And that applies to all of us equally. All right. So with that said, we reach the question of the hour, which is what is the woman's primary role? Or in other words, what would give a woman the feeling of life, the feeling of fulfillment? Okay, let's take that again.
Because I was gonna ask you, how do we know our primary role?
So,
Is whatever feels life,
yes,
alive?
yes, whatever feels most ourselves, right? Whatever gives us real fulfillment. Okay, so, and the question is, what is that? Now, every single one of us are different, like we mentioned, but there is generalities, like I mentioned, and as we'll go into, I think we will find commonality in this, whether this is the times that what people are saying, but more importantly, how we feel in our own gut. What is the primary role of a Jewish woman or of women in general? What makes us feel ourselves? What gives us the biggest feeling of fulfillment? Yeah, sorry.
Just have.
Okay, that's definitely a great start, or that would be a symptom, because I want to get to what it is. And maybe that would be a symptom of telling us what it, of getting to what it is. Okay, so with that said, I want to go and talk about the first Jewish woman. Okay, not just the first Jewish woman, but the first Jewish man and woman, Adam and Eve. So Adam and Eve were essentially one soul that were split into two. More specifically, they were one body divided into two. The Torah tells us that Adam and Eve were created as one being, back to back. So there were two fronts to this human being. They were created back to back. The Torah says God created them male and female, talking about the human being. He created the human being and he created them male and female. And then this human being, says the Torah, was lonely. This human being, who was male and female, was lonely. They were missing a feeling of wholeness. They were missing a feeling of importance, of being needed, of giving. So God decided that he's going to take this one person and divide them into two. And he created two people, a male and a female. And now the human being is not lonely, because the male needs the female and the female needs the male. And now that they're separated, they could become one. This in general is a very special idea within the Hasidic philosophy. Every time we encounter hardship, we call it the Nesira. This takes us back to the original cutting that God did. Although he separated, he created division, but the division was to bring a greater wholeness. Because only now Adam and Eve could have a relationship face to face. They could give to each other and they could fill each other's voids. So people say men and women are opposites. Men and women are the furthest thing from each other. Men are from Mars and women are from Venus, and we have no connection to each other. And the truth is that because men and women are opposites, that's why they're a perfect match for each other. Because they perfectly fill each other's voids. They perfectly don't step on each other's toes. If we recognize that we're supposed to be one, if I don't see it as that, if I see that my wife is there to give me and fulfill my life, then we're going to step on each other's toes, because her needs are very different than my needs. But if I see it as we are one being and we're there to fill each other. So in other words, I'm there to fill her needs. When we see it as that, then that's a perfect unity. Then it fits like a puzzle piece. It fits like a glove. Now that's a very difficult task to master. And with that, I wanted to, just for the sake of entertainment, to lighten up the situation here, show you a quick video, which I think will be a lot of fun. For those in the Zoom, let me know if you hear the sound. Here also, I hope we hear the sound.
In fact, somebody asked me what's the difference between men and women Kabbalistically. I said men are waffles, women are spaghetti. Very deep Kabbalah. Did you ever eat a waffle? Waffle.
Isaac, do you hear me? Justine, do you hear the video? I don't know if
Waffles, every waffle.
Isaac? Isaac, do you hear it?
Is self-contained. It has 4 walls around it. When you pour the maple syrup into the waffle, you make sure it doesn't go over the wall and stays within the square of the waffle. That's men. Women are spaghetti. There's no one piece of spaghetti. Every strand of pasta is intertwined and interconnected with hundreds of other pieces of pasta. Our brain is compartmentalized in hundreds of filing cabinets. We men have a filing cabinet called the car, the house, the wife, the mother-in-law, the children, the job, the therapist. Everything has a separate filing cabinet. And when we have to pay a bill, we open up that filing cabinet. We make sure it doesn't touch any other file. We take out the paper. Usually we don't do anything. We put it back quietly. We close the drawer and we make sure nothing else gets disturbed. And in the middle of our brain, we have a huge filing cabinet, the biggest one with a big sign, and it says on it, nothing. And we love hanging out in that space. In fact, most of us men, if we wouldn't have to make a living, we would hang out in that filing cabinet called nothing. So when you ask your husband, what are you feeling? And he looks at you and he says, nothing. And there's no answer that drives women as crazy as the answer, nothing. They can't believe it. They think you have another relationship with somebody else. They think you are hiding everything. No, women, we feel nothing. In fact, after this lecture, you're going to ask your husband, so how was it? And he's going to look at you, how was what? He was talking about you. Oh, here she goes. He doesn't know me. How was it? Oh, his jokes were not too bad. Most of them I knew. By a woman, there's no nothing. Her brain is like the World Wide Web. Microsoft Windows with every possible window open. And the tab is switching back and forth every moment like spaghetti. And the traffic of the World Wide Web, there are hundreds of millions of neurons consciously interacting at every single moment. And he's like clueless. Which is why you'll see the following scene. He comes on one night and he decides tonight he's going to be a good husband. So after dinner you sit down with him on the couch and he looks you in the eyes and he says, honey, do you want to share with me how your day was? You're like, wow, what a guy. He's been listening to Rabbi YY's lectures. He's been working on himself. Emet has been getting to him. He's working on his Shalom Bayit. It's so beautiful. So you start sharing with him your day. And of course you begin with the fact that the cleaners ruined a $600 dress. And he opens up the filing cabinet called cleaners. And it's a hard process for him. You could see on his brain. He said take it out and take out the file and check off, okay, the cleaner's price is $600. From the cleaners, you shift immediately to the fact that you don't like your job. So now he opens up the filing cabinet called a job. And then you move on to the fact that your sister-in-law insulted you at her son's bar mitzvah. And then the fact that at the Sheva Brachas you weren't invited. And then that his mother is really obnoxious to you. From there you discuss the fact that you don't have good cleaning help. And then of course you go to the kids. He's not happy in 3rd grade. The principal is not nice. This teacher doesn't know what he's doing. Then you go to the car. Then you go to the paper you have to finish. You discuss the leak in the bathroom. Summer plans. Your own mother. Your own sister. The upcoming bas mitzvah. It's now 2 minutes and 10 seconds. You have already explored 48 topics. And this is what he's doing. He's opening and closing filing cabinets. He went from the cleaners to the bathroom, to the cleaning lady, to your mother, to your sister-in-law, to the bar mitzvah, to the bas mitzvah, to the chuppah, to your job, to your paper, to your car, to the swimming pool, to the summer, to the camp, to the crisis in school. It's 4 minutes now. 397 topics have been explored and you're just beginning. This poor guy for the last 4 minutes has been opening and closing filing cabinets, and remember, nothing can touch anything else. So he takes it out. It's mamish a very, very heavy game. Now after 4 minutes, as you're about to begin topic 400, he is about to go crazy. The logical choice for him at this moment, the most logical thing is suicide. There's a problem. He loves you. And he doesn't want you should be a widow. So that's not an option. So he does the second to the best option under these trying circumstances. And that is, he falls asleep. And within 20 seconds, he's snoring on the top of his lungs. And you're stone-faced. You were just having this whole romantic experience, and this guy just fell asleep on you. You are so hurt. Little do you know that the snoring is an expression of his deepest love. Because the only other option was for him to shoot himself in his head. And the only reason he didn't is because he loves you so much. So if you could look at the snoring and say, what a special man. The love of my life. My dearest partner. Ah! You're good.
You've just experienced.
Can you send us that?
Sure.
Video,
I'll.
please?
That is wonderful.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay. So that was just a little break. So I think we got the point. Men and women are definitely different. And the question is, what is that difference? So we don't have a lot of time. We have 15 minutes. I think that was still worth it, but I don't know what we could do in 15 minutes. In terms of my slides, I'm 6 out of 12 down. So we'll see what we could do. And I think we just started. But let's see where we go with this. Okay. So at the beginning of time, going back to Adam and Eve, God cursed Eve. He didn't just curse Eve, he cursed Adam as well, right? Because Adam and Eve sinned, they ate from the tree of knowledge, and God cursed both Adam and Eve with a number of curses. And one of those curses was the woman will desire her husband. Or better said, the actual language is that a woman will be hungry for her husband. That was the language that the Bible used, that God used. And the Medrash tells us that God is very good at a lot of things, but he's not good at cursing. Because the fact that God cursed the woman to be hungry for their husband, this leaked out to the men, and the men found out that women desire to have a husband. So the men are busy going crazy, running around looking for a wife. They can't hold the temptation of being needed, of being wanted, that they're the ones that are running around looking for a wife. So this actually ended up being a blessing for the woman. But I think this language that I want to talk about, that women are hungry for their husband, this I think, tells us a little bit of insight in what is the difference between men and women, what is the uniqueness of a woman, where will women find their feeling of fulfillment, their feeling of life, feeling of wholeness, and where men and women are specifically different and therefore become one, right? That's what we were speaking about, where they are different and therefore they could become one, because the second we're the same, we cannot become one. And I heard this great line from Rabbi Manis Friedman. So this is Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson. He's very good. There's another rabbi by the name of Rabbi Manis Friedman, and he talks a lot about marriage. And he says, in marriage, people say there's a give and take. He says there's no give and take. In marriage, we don't take. In marriage, you receive. Because take keeps us apart. Receiving brings us together. When there's a give and receiving, that's when we become one. And in a relationship of giving and receiving, it's just as important to receive as it is important to give. And perhaps, which I hope to get to this a little bit more, perhaps the one that's receiving is doing more for the giver than the giver is doing more for the receiver.
Okay, can you say that again?
Perhaps the receiver, the recipient, is doing more for the giver than the giver doing for the receiver. And I'll explain what I mean very simply. God, like we spoke about, is the only inherent truth, the only inherent being, the only being that doesn't need anything. All of us, we're made up of things. We're made up of a purpose. We're made up of a lifestyle. We're made up of a mission, which has to do with our personality. If we fulfill that mission, if we fulfill that personality, we feel fulfilled. If we don't fulfill that personality, we don't feel fulfilled. Now, if my personality is to be a giver, then I'm not whole. I'm missing the receiver. And I need a receiver to be a giver. If my personality is to be a receiver, I am giving by being the receiver. Okay? I am giving by being the receiver. And
I see that.
Sure. What do you mean? Explain what you mean.
That when we tap in to truly who we are, we can give, and we can give to ourselves and have to experience being the receiver as well. Of ourselves.
Sure.
For us.
Sure.
By us.
Sure. And we have to be present with ourselves and allow ourselves to receive ourselves.
Yeah.
Yes, that's very true. That's very good.
That's
very good. Yeah. So in a marriage, in every give and take, like we said, there's no give and take. We have to learn how to give, and we have to learn how to receive, and that's how we become one. And particularly, like we said, a woman hungers for her husband. What does hunger connote? Hunger connotes receiving. Hunger says, I'm waiting to be given. I'm not looking, I'm not driving. The man is searching for the wife, and the woman is hungry. What does hungry mean? Hungry means that I'm waiting for my husband. If I'm going to go out to look for him, then I'm going to ruin the relationship. You know why? Because I'm not going to let him be the giver that he wants to be. But if I'm going to wait for him to give, and I'm going to be a receiver, I'm going to be giving to him more than he's giving me. That's what hunger is all about. So primarily in a relationship, the man is the giver and the woman is the receiver. Those are words. Now, what does that mean? Again, we have 10 minutes here. So I want to be able to get to that, but just to give a few practical words, and I want to go into the Kabbalah of what that means and really understand what that is all about. Just a few words. Going back to what Anita said. So Anita mentioned that the fulfillment of a woman is having a baby. The fulfillment is nurturing. You use the word nurturing. And I think that nurturing is an incredible thing. Nurturing is an incredible word. To properly understand, what does nurture mean? What does it mean to nurture? Nurture is something that only a woman knows how to do. Men don't know how to do this. Right?
The hunger, nourish.
To nourish the hunger, right? But I think what nurture means, and if we can understand this, is to be the home, to be the base, to be the place of comfort, to be the place of security. Let's talk about a child. A father is very important in a child's life. But what a father could do is give to the child. They could give a lot of things. They could educate the child. But who is going to love the child for who they are? Who is going to receive the child? Right? That's going to be the mother. That's what nurture is. Nurture is the ability to receive the child. Or when your husband comes home from work and all he wants is to be received. He needs to be received more than anything. Come, let's talk, let's connect. That place of wholeness, of completion, of nurture, of wholesome. There's something that the woman could give. And again, it doesn't, going back to my previous point, it doesn't take away from doing more. A woman could always go past that and do more. But talking about the premise, the basis, what makes women feel the most whole inside, the most themselves, what they're really all about, that feeling of fulfillment is the ability to nurture, the ability to receive. And going back to what I think, I'm not sure if you mentioned this or someone else mentioned this, the concept of woman being the basis of Judaism, the wholesomeness of Judaism, the home of Judaism. Okay, so I want to go into the Kabbalah a little bit of this and see where we could go. Unless we should wrap this up, but let's try. Because we don't have a lot of time. We're going to try to run through this. Let's talk about the Kabbalah of women. So in Kabbalah, we have two very important concepts. One is called lights, and one is called vessels. Where lights could also be used as energy. Energy and vessels. The energy is contained in the vessel. Everything in life is an energy and a vessel. For example, I'm saying something right now. There's the idea that I'm saying, and then there's the words that are conveying that idea. So the idea would be the light, the energy. The words would be the vessel that are holding that idea. And everything in life, there's the light and there's the vessel. There's the energy and there's the vessel, the recipient of that energy. Okay? And God created the world. He created the world, lights and vessels. Body and soul is a light and a vessel. Okay? Albert Einstein created the theory of relativity, right? And my understanding is that based on that, the GPS works. Why does GPS need to come onto the theory of relativity? Because GPS works with satellite. But satellite is so many miles away. So without the theory of relativity, we wouldn't have proper time in our GPS. There would be a delay. So only by Albert Einstein's idea could we create a GPS. Something like that. I'm not exactly an engineer, but it has to do with that, right? Now I ask you a question. Did Albert Einstein have in mind the GPS? No. If you told him, you know how great your idea is that we created a GPS, he would say, what are you talking about? My idea is so much greater than that. It's an idea. It's truth. It's purpose. It's mission. It's vision. It's reality. It's a GPS. But if you talk to the engineer and you say, look how great this idea is, such a truth, such an idea, such a brilliant mind. He said, yeah, you know what it created? It created a GPS. Because the engineer, what he cares about is how did it affect my life? Do I have a GPS or I don't have a GPS? But Albert Einstein sees no value in the GPS. So when it comes to the question, which role is more important? giving or receiving, the light or the vessel. Depends who we are. Depends on our personality. If God created us to serve the purpose of giving, then we're going to underappreciate, we're going to deappreciate the vessel. But if God created us to be a recipient, then we're not going to appreciate the giver, and we're going to fully appreciate that vessel. And perhaps the movement of equality actually came from men by not appreciating what women have to offer. Because they say, if you're not doing this, if you're not giving, then you're not appreciated. And only by recognizing what we are and how God created us, we will realize what's really important, recognizing both are really important. And they serve very, very different roles. So let me go into where I see that a little bit more. Okay, that was my mistake. I didn't do that. So this is the Albert Einstein slide. Okay. Okay, so now we're moving right along. You got a picture of that? I'll give another example, and we're going to try to wrap this up. I hope to answer the questions. Let's talk about love in the 5 love languages. Okay, so everyone knows the experience of do you love me? What do you mean do I love you? Of course I love you. Right? Yes, sure. Right? So the famous story goes that the guy comes to the rabbi and the wife says, he doesn't love me. He said, what do you mean? Of course I love you. So she says, but you haven't expressed. He's like, what do you mean? When we got married, I told you I love you. If anything changes, I'll let you know. So why is the 5 love languages so important? The reason is because we have to be able to express that love. But I have a question. Is it just technical? Is the importance of the 5 love languages, in other words, the vessel for the light, the expression of that feeling, is it just technical? Is it just because I don't know of your love until you express it, so that's why I need you to express it? Or does it have more importance than that? Does it have more value? Does it run deeper than just the technical relationship? Does it just carry the energy? Meaning, if I was in tune with your energy, would I not need would the 5 love languages not add anything here? So I would venture to say that in life, we have 2 opposite extremes. Talk about an idea. Right? When I'm trying to explain to you something, there's 2 opposite ways of going about it. There's abstract and there's substance. There's giving you the abstract idea, and then there's giving you a concrete example. Which one is greater? Which one is greater?
The concrete.
Is the greatest abstractness of the theory of relativity greater than a GPS? Or is the reality of a GPS greater than the theory of relativity? Perhaps the fact that a GPS took that theory and made it real, made it concrete, made it something that I could touch, that holds that much more value, not just practically, but also in spirit. It brings something to the table that the theory cannot bring to the table. Hasidic masters tell us that when the greatest wise man imparts his wisdom through an example, because without an example, he would not be able to impart it. The student needs an example to understand what he's saying. It's not only the student that's gaining, but it's the teacher that's also gaining. Because until now, their wisdom was only theoretical. And now, because of the student, it became real. When the engineer made a GPS, it became real. Right? So I think I'm running out of time, but that concept of tangible versus abstract. And the same thing is in love. The 5 love languages versus love is not just technical. It's taking an abstract love and making it real, making it practical, making it tangible. The value of tangibility is something that we cannot underestimate. And this takes us back to the concept of lights versus vessels. They both come from God equally. I'm running out of time, but really, in truth, tangibility, or the vessel, has a greater connection to God than the light. I can't really go into that now because it's very abstract and it's a very deep concept, but that is the reality. And this is the primary difference between men and women. Now, this has to be taken with a grain of salt because women, just like men, have a body and a soul, and men, like women, also have a body and a soul. So we both have lights and vessels. We both appreciate both, and within men and women, we'll all be a little different, right? And it all goes down to our soul, our personality. But in a general sense, men are created to be the light. Women are created to be the vessel. Men are created to bring the theory. Women are created to bring the tangibility. And I think every single one of us appreciate this in a conversation with our husbands, because or with our spouse, when we have a conversation, the male will always talk theoretical, and the female will always talk practical, and they always miss each other, right? And he says, but theoretically, and he says, but she says, who cares theoretically, but practically? Do you resonate with this? And the ideal is to recognize what each of us bring to the table. What I'm going to close with, maybe I'll close with your question in a moment, but what I'm going to close with is the concept of Shabbat. So when I got married, I really came to appreciate this idea. Growing up in yeshiva, so we're vested in a world of spirituality. And it comes Shabbat, and Shabbat is all about a spiritual day of study and prayer. And then when I got married, it takes less of that, right? There's less time for study, there's less time for prayer, more time with the family. But I came to appreciate something which took me recognizing this idea, which is in yeshiva, the aroma of Shabbat did not exist. The Shabbat meal, the songs, the clothing, the family, the Shabbat spirit, that the woman is lighting the candles and she brings a warmth of Shabbat into the home. The human, the real, the tangible, the concrete. The experience. Who needs a theoretical God?
Senses.
Right? We need a tangible God. But on the other hand, if we don't have the theory, if we don't have the service, if we don't have the spirit, so then Shabbat is just going to be a beautiful meal. We need a husband and wife. We need a body and a soul. And each one appreciates the opposite thing. And only by them coming together, recognizing that they create one whole, do we have a perfect unity and we fulfill our purpose. Recognizing the beauty of what that's about. You know, I'm a little what's the word? I guess I'm tied to one side of the story, so I'm not going to take this all the way. But if my mother was sitting giving the class, she would explain why all the value is in the women's work, and the men, that's just like, we don't really need that. But recognizing, and that has a place, and I mentioned that for a moment, how the vessels in a way are more connected to God, which is why when Mashiach comes, it says the woman is going to be greater than the man, and our body will be greater than our soul, etc. But just understanding this inherent value, that each of us have a unique purpose that only us could do, only we could do, each of us as an individual, and no one else could do that. And when I bring my inherent unique value to the table, that's when I fulfill my purpose. And when you have a guy that hangs out with women too much and ends up just talking woman talk, then you also have an empty situation. You also don't have a full, complete story. right? You need both sides. You need the guy doing the guy thing, and you need the woman doing the woman thing. And only like that you have a full story. You have a complete home. You have healthy children, you have a healthy marriage, and you have a connection to God, and you create a difference. And summing it up, going back, I don't know if this is going to suffice for you, but going back to your question, just closing it off. So I'm going to divide your question into two. There's two aspects to your question. Question number one is why do we have a mechitza? That's the question. And that question is going to end up boiling down to why can't women lead the service? Why can't there be an equal participation between men and women in the service? And that's for another class. I'm not going to go into that question today. But assuming that we need to be separate, okay? Assuming that we need to be separate when it comes to our service. Men and women need to be separate. The real question that you're asking is, so if that's the case, why are men playing the primary role? Or in other words, why don't we have synagogues for women? Okay, is that a good question? And the answer to that question is there could be synagogues for women. There's allowed to be synagogues for women. Women are allowed to create a minyan and have aliyahs and do all those stuff. The reason why there isn't is because, as I mentioned before, each of us have a primary role and a secondary role. And we focus on our primary role. And for the woman, the primary role is to create a home and be that recipient. The concept of prayer is more spiritual. So my wife always says, my wife likes to pray, but if she doesn't have time to pray, she says, my prayer is taking care of the kids. Which is why in our history today, creating a minyan for women is much more sensitive. And there could be other issues with it because of progressiveness. But in an ideal time, there's definitely space for a woman's minyan, and I think there has been. And there's been women that have put on tefillin before, and there's women that have worn taluses before. But it was only if they've surpassed what their primary role is, which is recognizing that they are here to be the recipient, to be that home. Recognizing, and I think this is very important, I think where the issue lies and the disservice that Reform Judaism has done for us, to be very, not talking about individuals, I'm talking about the movement, the disservice that they've done for us, just like the disservice that equality has done for us, is they've underestimated the importance of the Jewish woman. And more importantly, they've underestimated the concept of Judaism in a home. In my life, my Judaism is more in my home than in my shul, than in my synagogue. My Judaism is not about getting an Aliyah, and my Judaism is not about being counted in a minyan. That's a very, very minute part to my Judaism. My main Judaism is eating kosher and keeping Shabbos and living a Jewish home and raising Jewish children and studying in my home and praying in my home. Now, I would venture that's what Judaism is really about. And the disservice that Reform Judaism has done for us is it robbed us of that concept. It robbed us of Judaism in our home. And if you think about it, who plays a primary role in all of those things that I've just mentioned? Kosher, Shabbat, a Jewish home, Jewish children. Who stands as the cantor in that? Who stands at the forefront of that? Recognizing, right? So just to sum it up again, I'm recognizing that just like men are allowed to sometimes take care of the children, women are also encouraged to pray. That's only if they have time for it. There's no obligation for women to pray. You know why? Not because they're not important enough, because they have something more important to do. Because prayer is spiritual, and their primary role is to take the spiritual and make it actual, make it real. Kosher home, kosher kitchen, Shabbat, light the candles. Bring a Jewish atmosphere into my home. Not the spiritual. Then I'm being someone else. Then I'm escaping myself. That doesn't feel good. that doesn't feel whole. I'm not going to feel complete. I'm not going to feel fulfilled if I'm trying to do the other person's job. Okay, I hope we're a little 10 minutes over time. So I hope we sufficed for that. And we are going to continue next week. Hopefully we have more questions for next week. You would also have another
Are you
question.
continuing this?
No, I'm done. I'm done. I had one more slide.
Well,
No,
then
that's
keep
it.
it for another class. Women, primary role, women, does the primary role change over life? Once you're menopausal,
Once you're,
menopausal,
what does that mean?
you've hit menopause, right? So
What's
you're
menopause?
She can't have children.
childbearing age. That's
Right.
no longer your primary role,
So it's not about children. I think I've made that, I tried making that clear.
but I guess my question is, does the primary role change over time?
Definitely. For all of us, like I mentioned, that in life.
Yeah.
How is it for
Redefine.
women?
So first of all,
in
in life, like I mentioned, we all change, right? We all evolve. But your personality hasn't changed, and what you're good at hasn't changed. And being there for your teenagers and being there for your married children, you're never not a mother, right? Like came Father's Day, so I texted some of the people in the community, wishing them happy Father's Day. And I wasn't sure about certain people that are way past their children years. And then I was like, no, they're still dads. You never stop being a dad, and you never stop being a mom.
said like the minion made up of women, and yes, you can do that once your primary role is fulfilled. So maybe when you were 60 years
So
old,
definitely,
it leaves room for that role.
so definitely the concept of growing in your spiritual service for men and women, and especially women, evolves later. Praying more and studying more, right? Because you have that time. Going back to school, like I mentioned, giving back to yourself, kind of returning to our child years, progressing in our own growth, and then imparting that wisdom. That is definitely something which evolves. I know, I've shared this before, that I have a men's. I started a learning program for Chabad men, online program, where people like my dad or Hasidic Chabad rabbis around the world. There's over 200 Chabad rabbis that have joined this program. That we give them a study, like a study plan with booklets and classes, and we help them grow in their study. And at one point, there have been a lot of women that have reached out and said that they want that too. So Shani actually started, together with myself, we started one for women. The women are almost outdoing the men at this point. There's a lot of interest. One thing I've definitely seen very clearly is the men also, but the women especially, it's a hard gap to fill when you have women that have 5 children at home and they have maybe 15 minutes in their week to give to this. And then you have other women that would love to spend an hour a day on this. And that's beautiful, right? And one doesn't take from the other. And definitely, like I mentioned, when we do our primary role, when we have more time, then we could definitely go on. But recognizing what we're meant for, what we were created for, that's going to give us inner peace. And that's what I want to stress here. It's not just about what God wants you to do, right? The Rebbe always spoke about this. The truth of the Torah, the truth of God, is our own truth. And when we tap into that, we feel the most fulfilled. It's not about taking on some Lord from on high, but recognizing the recipe of how we were created, what we were meant to do. Right? When we do things with our body that wasn't meant for us, we don't feel good. When we do things with our body that we were meant to do, we feel the best. Right? It's all about what we're meant to do, what's natural for us. And recognizing what we were meant to do, what's meant for us, what's our mission, what's the most natural. And that goes into this role. Also for the men, it says that Jewish women are more an elderly Jewish woman is more valuable than an elderly Jewish man, because an elderly Jewish man is just a nuisance, but an elderly Jewish woman actually helps in the house. But what I'm saying is that that it works for both of us, right? Because men also at one point retire and they can't continue working. And that role shifts. We become the wise people, we become learners, self-growth, taking care of ourselves, taking care of the children and the grandchildren, and that never leaves. And you being the anchor of your family and the anchor of your children will never end. That will never end. And to be a mother, I don't know if it gets any easier emotionally. It's a hard work. And maybe that itself is about growth, study, right?
Make the transition.
What about women who can't have children or choosing not to have children? A lot of there's stigma on that,
Yes,
you know,
there
that
is.
you're selfish, that you don't want children and in this day
Or
and
if
age,
you can't have
Yeah, I say
children,
you
that you're
can't.
less valued.
right? And like,
Again,
I have daughters, they don't want, they
profile.
don't want to bring children into this world right now. I mean, that's,
Right.
you know, that's a real, I hear that among young people and they think,
Why would
you know,
I
but they
want
don't have a
children?
spiritual practice though either.
Right.
But,
So there's a lot to say about that, and
yeah.
it's a sensitive topic. But one thing is for sure is, like I mentioned, your role, your personality has something to give in every scenario, no matter where you find yourself. And that's what our life is about, to be the best self
Right.
in
And they
every
do that through
situation.
their work, their job,
And
nurturing
whatever,
other people.
exactly,
for-
whatever they're gonna do in
Right.
life, there's the way they do it that no one else in the world could do it. Isaac, thank you so much for joining us. Okay, thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully you'll join us again. We'll be in touch, God willing.
Oh, Lisa wrote,
All the best.
we daven every morning, thank you Hashem for not making me a man.
Yes.
There you go.
In the prayer. It's in
Okay.